Uh, I want to read you a note here, just to start out, and there's something that's not new. There's nothing new under the sun, according to Ecclesiastes. It's all whatever is, was, it's always been. But sometimes we think that this is new, y'all. But that ain't nothing new. Everything is, has been. But something I want to say is, if the physical or the natural world, we all see with our natural eyes. I mean, of course, that's not new. That's not a no-brainer. Everybody knows that. They understand that. And what we see is the results of what our natural eyes can comprehend. But the other side of that, is there anything in this room that we can't see with our natural eyes that exists that could possibly be seen with our third eye or with the eye of the Spirit? And of course the answer to that is yes. And what we see with our natural eyes we think is real because we see it and we call it real. But what we can't see with our natural eyes, we don't call it real because we can't see it. But yet it's that we can't see that is the root of everything we can see. Do you understand what I mean when I say that? In other words, everything we can see comes from something we can't see. Mm-hmm. It came from the word we use as God. Now, whether that's a good word, I don't think it is. It's not a good word because not a good word to communicate. Of course, it's a good word, but it's not a good word to try to communicate some things, because when we say that, I say the word God, automatically we think in picture form. So if I say God, we're going to see what our mind has mentally conceived God to be. So, having said that, God, or the unseen light, is actually the source of everything that there is. There's nothing that exists that's not a part of that. So, everybody comes into the world with a mission, and that mission is not to save the world. And I said this last week when I had my conversion experience back in the mid-70s. I was in my mid to late 20s. That was what I thought that my commission or mission was, to get people saved. And so now, we kind of pun and make a joke. Well, I'm going to get y'all saved this morning. And we know that's not what I'm going to do. It's what not anybody can do. But we have those words, save and salvation. Those are really words that are so ingrained in our psyche that we don't really hear what that word means, because what we have ingrained in our psyche is just a natural idea of what that word means. But when we think about it, you go to the dictionary or the concordance and you look up that word, whether it's in the Old Testament or the New Testament, doesn't matter. You look up that word and you begin to see that that word actually means to be whole, W-H-O-L-E, or wholly, W-H-O-L-E-Y. In other words, complete and entire. So the concept and the idea is that somehow or another we are incomplete. And I think that's sort of a catch-22. We are and we're not. Maybe we're complete and don't know we're complete. Do you see what I'm saying? And if I don't know I'm complete, then maybe I can't function out of my wholeness, out of my completeness, or out of, we use the term, my higher self, or my divine self, or my spirit self, or my God self. Because I have that, I am that. But if a hardcore Christian heard me say that, what do you mean you're God self? Do you think you're God? Do you think that you are equal with God, etc.? And so it's hard to use terminology that is correct, but it's very offensive to an ear that's not trained to hear it from its correct perspective, like salvation and being saved. In other words, everybody wants to experience salvation. Everybody wants to be saved, whether they know they do or they don't know it. In other words, they want to be whole, because it's in wholeness that you find peace. It's when we're divided that we're all in turmoil. When we're whole, we find peace, we find happiness. And everybody wants that, I think. It seems to me that everybody wants that. Everybody but the Democratic Party, they're the only ones, and I don't need to get political, but I think they're the only ones that don't want peace in the land. But anyway, so I want to go, I'm doing something very different. I want you to go to a book that no preacher ever preaches out of, and no preacher ever even goes to it that I know of. Very few of them ever use the book of Ecclesiastes. I have heard a few preachers mention Ecclesiastes in passing through. And then fewer go to the book of Job, and those few that do have no inkling about what the book of Job is about. But the book that's in the Bible has always been here, and it's amazing that it's here, is the Song of Solomon. So I don't know if you've ever heard a preacher go to the Song of Solomon and read from the Song of Solomon, but I want you to go to the Song of Solomon. If you can find it. Find the book of Psalms, and then Proverbs, then Ecclesiastes, and then Song of Solomon is just 2 pages right there, and they're stuck together. So they'll be hard to find. The Song of Solomon. And I just want to read from this book, and I wanted to give you the title of this book. And you know, the thing about what I'm going to share is you can actually look in a Strong's Concordance and see what I'm about to say, what I'm fixing to share with you. The Song of Solomon. And if you're in a date Bible, it's on page 676. But in your Bible, if you'll just find Psalms and go toward the New Testament, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon. So everybody got it?
No.
All right. You still?
Just
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, like I said, it's stuck together, I'm sure, and it's just 2 or 3 pages to it, so it's not.
Okay, I got it.
Got it. Okay, chapter 1. I want to read from chapter 1 and chapter 2, but I want to look at the title, the Song of Solomon. Actually, in the Hebrew, that the title is Sha'ir Ha-Sha'rim. Sha'ir Ha-Sha'rim. Now, the word Solomon is completely different from that word Sha'arim. Actually, the word Sha'arim means quintessence. Now, do you understand the word quintessence? The word quin is what, 5? And essence or senses. So quintessence actually means your 5th sense. Right? Everybody with me on that page? So, and the word sha'ir, which is the word song, actually it means a poem. So actually, there ain't nothing about Solomon in this book. Nothing. So see right there, everybody. Huh? See, the whole title is wrong. The whole title gives the complete misconception of what the book's about. Now, I'm sure you've all heard people say, and I've heard preachers say, that it shouldn't be in the Bible because it's got a lot of sexual innuendos in it. Have y'all never heard of that? It does have some passages that sounds kind of X-rated a little bit. We're going to read them. So, I want you to be aware of that. But let's just look, chapter 1. So, it means the poem of quintessence, or the poem of residues. Actually, the title can actually read in Hebrew, residue of residues, or it means quintessence of quintessence. That's actually how the title could and should read. It would give a little better understanding. So, chapter 1, verse 13. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and read it in the King James. I guess all y'all reading of the King James?
That's what I have.
Okay. I'll read it from the King James. And like I said, it's a little X-rated, but let's just look at it. Verse 13. It says, "A bundle of myrrh is my well-beloved unto me. He shall lie all night between my breasts." Is that what yours says?
Yeah, betwixt.
Betwixt. You're right. Okay, you get old English. Betwixt. Chapter 4 and verse 3. And I've just picked out a few. I mean, you know, the whole book is like this. And any of you that's ever read it, you know that. Chapter 4 verse 3. It says, your lips are like a thread of scarlet, and your speech is comely. Your temples are like a piece of a pomegranate within thy locks. Thy neck is like the tower of David, builded for an armory, whereon there hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. Your two breasts are like two young roes that are twins, which feed among the lilies. Well, if I was a woman, I wouldn't necessarily like that description. I mean, I don't know about you, but he goes to telling me that my neck is like a tower that's built for a huge armory of soldiers. Sound like to me that's the neck of a huge muscle man. You know what I'm saying? So I would be offended if I was a woman and they use these terminologies for a description of me. And it just goes on and on and on in this book like this. And like I said, you know. So I'm going to come back now. I want to give you the Hebrew. I just want to give you the Hebrew for verse 13, chapter 1, verse 13. And I just wrote it out in the bottom of my Bible to simplify it, to put it in a language that's understandable. Okay? Verse 13 actually reads in the Hebrew this. It actually, and I want to say this. Let me go ahead and make this statement before I even read this from Hebrew. If we were to try to stay true to the literal interpretation, are there going to be books that we don't take literally? If we were to take this book literally, then her neck is some kind of a huge long thing that's like a giraffe that she's, you know, and what are her breasts? What does it say? Her breasts are like roes. I guess those are deer. I mean, that's pretty big. I guess. I'm not big. That feed among the lilies.
That's a big woman.
That's a big woman. Everything about this gal's big. You know, and now like the full-bodied women are in style, they're in vogue, and da-da-da-da-da, well, buddy. I mean, I'm trying to make a little pun and joke. I'm just trying to say how dumb it is if we take these books literally. Now, if you can't take this one literally, then let's go over to the book of Jonah. Could we, you see, the book of Jonah, the book of Psalms, the Song of Solomon, these are all considered poems or songs or psalms. But yet we take those books and we've been told you have to take them literal. You got to take them for just exactly what they mean. But then we go over to the 4 Gospels and we read them and say, you have to take them literal. So I'm just trying to make a point. You know, you see how confused we are? When we sit down and people sit down and try to read this, I remember that you have to read the Bible in 1 year. I don't know if you got it. I got it there. I got to read the Bible in 1 year. So you have to read like 4, 5, 6 chapters a day, every day. Don't skip a day, because if you do, then you got to do 10 or 15 the next day. If you skip 3 days, you're in trouble. You understand what? And that's something that a lot of people commit themselves to and try to do and read and think that they've really done something by doing that, other than confusing themselves more and more and more by doing that. Because if you're going to read this book literal, the Song of Solomon, then you're going to read the book of Jonah literal, the Song of Solomon, then you go over to read the 4 Gospels literal, you're confused. Because your brain can't comprehend these things that's being said here in poetry. Do you understand what I mean? Poetry, when you use poetry, you're using symbolic language. Symbolic language is not literal language. It can't be taken literal, and it's not meant to be taken literal. Right? And so we have to. So if I realize that and I begin to understand it, this is a book of allegories and symbols. And it comes back to my old teacher. I talk about her quite often, Dr. Fuchsia Pickett. She would tell me, Lynn, if you do not understand signs and symbols, you will never understand the Bible. If she said that 10 times, she said it 1,000 times. She just ingrained. So what do you got to do? You got to memorize signs and symbols. You've got to memorize allegories and see what they mean. So I'm going to go back and I want you to hear this. Remember, the title is Sha'ir HaSha'arim, which actually means quintessence of quintessence. And just, all you have to do is just Google it or ask Siri or look it up in a dictionary, and you'll see what that word actually is referring to, your fifth sense. So actually it's referring to something that's beyond your eyes that you see with this natural being. So when you talk about quintessence, you're talking about something beyond. Now that's the way this book is. So it's beyond the natural things that we try to comprehend. So how are we going to understand this book? We can only understand it through the eye of Da'at. That's a Hebrew word that actually means it's the window into the unseen realm, where the unseen realm brings you truth and reality. In other words, it's like opening a door into the knowledge, the psyche of God, and then God giving you a download, giving you insight and information. And so that's what this book is about. So listen to what this says. And once you get the flow of this, and I'll recommend a book to you, and it's not an easy book to read because it's by Carlos Soares, and it's called The Song of Solomon. But it's this book from the original Hebrew, from the original code. It's a beautiful read. It's wonderful if you can do that, if you want to get it. But it's called The Song of Solomon by Carlos Soares. Verse 13, here's what it says in the Hebrew. Because you are in me, I am the holy apostasy. Breath from the lower depth over against breath from on high. Doesn't even sound anywhere near what we just read in King James, does it? But listen to it. Just listen to this. Listen to what the Hebrew is saying here. Because you are in me. What is this about? I'm going to tell you one of the key themes of this book is the breath. Well, what is the breath? The breath we find right in Genesis 1, 2, and 3. The Ruach, the breath of God moving upon the creation. I mean, everything exists because of that breath. Now listen to how it says this. Because you are in me. What? How is the divine in us? Through your breath. Because when your breath leaves you, so does the divine essence leave you. I mean, you don't live, right? You can't live without that breath. So that's a because you are in me, I am the holy apostasy. You hear that? I mean, everybody in the entire world can say that. Even though they may be wicked or corrupt, because they have breath in them, they have contact with the holy divine essence of all that God is. Because you are in me, I am the holy apostasy. Breath from my lower depth. Breath, comes from my natural down into the depth of my lungs, over against the breath that comes from on high. There's your two breaths. It's your breath. It's your inhale and exhale. That's the contrast. That's the life of everything that exists. Is that. That is God. That's God. Not an old gray-headed man up there that's got this magnifying glass and a pencil in his hand. As we just saw in there from one of our favorite preachers, watching you, you're going to get caught, and you're going to get a list, and there you go. You got to stand before the judgment seat. Bless God, you're going to be in trouble. All right, let's go back over to verse chapter 4, and I'm just going to use verse 5. King James says, your two breasts are like two young roes that are twins, which feed among the lilies. In the Hebrew, it says this, in and through your two resistances, the breath of life and the breath of existence are at the same time taken in and given out. Wow. Isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that make a lot more sense than to sit here and to try to read a book and to magnify the breast of a woman by trying to compare them to a deer or a pomegranate, or you see what I'm saying? What do you get out of that? What can you get out of reading that when you read it that way? When we try to read it in that, see, and the translators who worked on this to translate it, you know, obviously there is a manipulation behind it. At least I would say there's a manipulation behind it, because it seemed clear to me that that it's that way. Okay, I wanted to just show you this. This is a tip, just the very tip of the iceberg. Of course, that's all it took to sink the Titanic, was just the very tip of the iceberg. This is just the very tip of the iceberg, and I would challenge anybody, professor, theologian, or whoever, to just, like I said, get them a Strong's Concordance if they have to, and look at the words that I just said, and they can see for themselves what this is saying and what it's referring to. So, having said that, go back with me to Genesis chapter 1 again, because I want to come back. Last week I don't know why I was struggling with trying to spell some Hebrew words, but this concept and this whole idea, I want you to think about it with me, of the seed. I got too much in this bag. Well, can't even find the black one. I want to put this word up here in Hebrew. Hopefully it shows up good on your board. Does it show up, Kirby, on your thing?
Yeah.
Beth, Rash, Aleph, Sheen, Yod. And the reason I'm picking on this word is because that word, that Hebrew glyph, Badarashit, that's the first word in the Hebrew Bible. You know, if I had my little Hebrew Bible right here, that's the very first word. And it's translated in the beginning. And in error, of course, just exactly like I just said the Song of Solomon, quintessence of quintessence. This is the same thing. I mean, it should not be a shock to us to realize that they have translated or mistranslated or purposefully translated words in different ways. But I wanted to look at this word. It's translated in the beginning, Badarashit. Now I want to give you another word right here, and you can see the similarity of this word and the one above it. You see the similarity of that word? It's basically the same word, it just doesn't have the Beth. The Beth is the number, the Beth right here, that character is number 2. That's the second glyph in the Hebrew alphabet. You have the first one is Aleph, and the second character is the Beth. This is number 1 and this is number 2. And the only way number 1, being a symbol, being a sign, number 1 being that sign of God, or like, you know, if I talked about God in a singularity, I would call him El, the Aleph with a Lamid, and that's the word for power. But it's translated for God. But God is power, right? But I could also say God is essence. Or some of the modern day quantum science would call God is the field. The all. I mean, all those names work. And get him outside, get the name God outside of anthropomorphism. That's what we have to do. We've got to get that outside of this. The only way God can be anthropomorphic is that it's in me through my breath, through my two breaths. My two breaths. My inhale, my exhale. Just like we seen over there in Song of Songs. And the way that God views itself is to split itself from itself so it can mirror itself back to itself. Y'all get all that by itself? And that's what this is about. So this Beth is called the temple. It's called the house. But the probably greatest and best way to define it is call it a container. Because an animal can contain this, a human can contain this, a tree can contain this, a rock can contain this. Everything that is, a planet, a star, can contain this. So that Beth then, if we can understand this in its simple form, that Beth actually is and means the seed. Because in the seed is the blueprint, is the pattern, is the mission, is the purpose for everything that seed represents. So it doesn't matter what the seed is. Everything. So if God reduces itself down to something as little or as less as a breath, then that's God's seed or pattern in you. So it means that you can't be no less than what that is. You may not can develop and cultivate all that pattern or that blueprint or that seed, that design has for you, but you really can. It's not necessarily easy. Do you know where we all fail? Do you know where every one of us miss the mark there? Lack of discipline. I just don't want to do it.
We get distracted.
Or it's too hard. You say it's too hard. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. Do we have the power to we have the power to do it. We have the ability. Many times we may have that power and that ability snuffed away somewhere, hid under something, hid under a pain or an unforgiveness but we have that because we are this Beth. We are the temple. We are the container. That's the best word that I can use to try to communicate what that Hebrew glyph is. To call it Veth, V-E-T-H, or Beth, B-E-T-H, is really misleading to the mind because everybody I know, when I say Beth, they think of a woman, and most of them will equate it with Bethel, the temple of God. A building over in Jerusalem somewhere. That's what they'll think. But if I say container, you say, wait a minute, what is it? Well, container can be a glass. You're a container. A rock is a container. A tree's a container. Flower's a container. Everything that is a container. So therefore, that's why the Hebrew Bible opens up with this glyph first. Especially in Genesis. We should pay attention to that and make a note of that and realize why wouldn't God open this book up with His glyph that represents itself? But He doesn't. If you notice, He deposits that glyph over in the middle of the word. The aleph is in the middle. Why? It's pulling between the two breaths. It's the light that's within that's in contrast with the light that's without, that pulls on each other. It's in that contrast that creation evolves and grows and becomes. But now what about this word right here? This word is called Bereshit. What would this word be called? This word is called Reshit, without the Beth. Now that word's used a lot in Scripture, so I want you to look with me at the use of this word. Just hold your place here in Genesis 1, because we will come back over there to that place. Go with me to 1 Samuel. Find that place. 1 Samuel. And let's see, chapter 2. First Samuel chapter 2, and look at verse 29. Okay? Wherefore, keep ye at my sacrifice and at my offering, which I have commanded in my habitation, and honorest thy sons above me, to make yourselves fat with the chiefest. You see that word chiefest? That's this word right here. This word is called the chiefest. This word is called the chief. And I'm not going to take you to all these places where this word is actually used in this fashion. But I want you to go with me to Deuteronomy 18. I want to show you another one right here. It's the same identical word. It's used quite a lot. Matter of fact, Deuteronomy chapter 18, it's used more for this word we're going to look at in Deuteronomy 18. Everybody found that? Deuteronomy 18, verse 4. The first fruits. First fruits. Everybody say first fruits.
First fruits.
It's the same identical word. First fruits is used a lot in the Old Testament, but it's this word right here, rashit. Now you think about this, and I want you to think about it. Beth is the container. Well, Beth being the container, it contains the seed that it should automatically fall in our mind that the word behind that would be first fruits, or the chiefest, or the chief of the things that God's. So in that respect, that is a perfect way to open up this book to realize what is God's chief, first fruit, first place, first thought, first idea. It's you. It's you. First and foremost, no matter who you are. Well, what happens? What happens? Something happens to every one of us, and it's a distraction. But it's not a mistake. It's just a distraction, and I want to show you this distraction. Paul said this in 1 Corinthians 15. I know all of you are aware of this and remember this, but Paul said this in 1 Corinthians 15. First the natural, and then the spiritual. Is that correct? Yet, the natural is created in the womb of the mother by the Spirit. So the Spirit is the designer, the builder of the container that's in the womb of a woman. And so the Spirit designs it, builds it, is there to empower it through all of the phases and those steps it goes through the embryo, fetus, and then the full developed child in the womb, then pushes it out. Then the Spirit breathes it, baptizes it, fills it with its what? Breath.
Yeah.
And it becomes a living thing. You know, it's able to grow and become mobile. But first it was the natural. That's what Paul says. Then the spiritual. But both of them have a power of their own. He tells you that in that 15th chapter. He said the natural has a power of its own, and the spiritual has a power of its own. Many times the natural overpowers the spiritual. And maybe I should say most of the time. Because of well, I want to look at this. And go with me to the Gospel of Luke. Matthew, Mark, Luke. And I want to put something on the board. Matthew, Mark, Luke, chapter 2. Just go with me over there. And I want to put two things over here. And you'll remember this. I'm going to do my horizon just a little different than I normally do. I'm gonna put it at, kind of curve it, just a little bit of a curvature on the horizon there. Okay? And then right here, I want to, I could probably get me a red and a yellow and color me some red apples and some yellow lemons. And just call that a tree with its fruit. And that's the tree that you see with your physical eye, and it's in the daylight, right? And then this right here is a part that we can't see. Why is that? Because it's another tree that can't be seen with the physical eyes, right? I mean, look out there. You see the tree, you can see this part of the tree. But you can't see this part below the horizon, right? Below the... See, it's just exactly like looking at you. I can see you, but I can't really see what's live in you. I can't see what's living you. What's living you? Your breath. Jesus said you can see the tree move, but you cannot see what moves the tree. You can see as the tree sways in the wind. You can't see the wind that's swaying the tree. That's the Spirit. That's where the life's at. That's what he's talking about. So now this is all the natural. This is the horizon. So we have 12 hours day and 12 hours of night. At night, you know, under the earth or whatever, the sun's gone on the opposite side or what have you. The earth's turned around. So we have that. Now, right here I want to do the astrological wheel, because both of these, you remember Genesis 2:9. Genesis 2:9, it says, the tree of life, what's living you? What's living is not the food you ate this morning. It's not your heart. What's living you? It's the breath. It's that you can't see it. You can't see what's living you. But it's living you. So you can't see it. It's the tree of life. What can you see? You see the results of the life, which are what? The fruits. This part of the tree that we can see is the part religion has so grossly kept us from. Why? Because it's called the tree of knowledge. You can see the results of knowledge. You can also see the results of the lack of knowledge. Because Scripture tells you very clearly it's the lack of knowledge that puts you in captivity. It's the lack of knowledge that puts you in prison. It's the lack of knowledge that weakens you. It's the lack of knowledge that causes you to become decayed, etc., etc., etc. So knowledge becomes power, but knowledge is the fruit. It's the results of the life lived. You either put yourself in a position to know or to not know. If we cannot or do not or will not allow the flow of Spirit to expand our knowledge, we stifle our growth. We hinder it. We snuff it out. It's not that it ain't there. It's there. It's there in every one of us. And we have that choice. We have that wonderful choice to make a choice that I'm going to let this, I'm going to open my mind. I remember making literally a quality choice. Okay, God, I'm going to open my mind. And I think one of the first ones I listened to outside my box, this is 25, 30 years back, I'm saying about the time I moved down here, I was way outside the box of normal Christianity anyway. But to really get outside that box to what they all said, that's demonic, that's of the devil, I listened to Wayne Dyer and Esther Hicks. And I thought, God, if these people get me in trouble, get me possessed of demons, it's on your back. If I get in trouble because they lead me down the wrong path or whatever, and I opened my mind. That's what I did. The only way I could get outside that box, you know, I've been hammered against the rapture, my God, since my second year pastoring. I mean, I could see that don't work. That's just nearly ignorant to embrace that. But now, there for a year and a half, I preached the rapture as hard as anybody else could preach it. I preached to them people, bless God, you better get saved. You better come over here and get right. Jesus could come back tonight, and you'll die and go to hell. I mean, he could split the eastern sky. I mean, you know, I'd get hammered at that. I could almost hack. But there was so many holes in it. It was just, I mean, you know, and of course I always, since I started, I was just a word freak. I wanted to know what this word meant, and I could see right out of the starting gate they didn't translate a lot of them right. So then I realized they hardly translated any of them right. So anyway, so I got really hungry about that. Now, this is probably one of this circle tree. It says clearly in the Hebrew right there that in the midst of the garden. The word midst, that sounds like an old English word, it's the word middle. It doesn't say anything about two trees. It makes an accusation that one aspect of this tree in the middle of the garden produces life. And it makes another aspect about this tree in the garden that it produces knowledge. And then they use that knowledge with two different words, the Hebrew word ra and the Hebrew word tov. And of course the translators, just exactly like if I'm translating breast over here and I don't realize that's really not the correct Hebrew word, they have it pretty close to the place in the anatomy where that breath is working. That breath is working in the breast. But it's not like it tries to appear to be there in the translation. It appears to be looking like a woman's breast. And that's not at all. It's referring to your breath. Your inhale and your exhale. Because it's in that. I mean, you know, when you do meditation, what do you do meditation? You do meditation paying attention to the breath. It's like Wim Hof. One of the ways he's trying to empower people in his method is through the breath. I mean, you know, and so if we come to a place to realize that is the holy thing that is what makes me holy. H-O-L-Y. Is that breath. So when I can learn to view this tree not as two separate trees, but I can learn to view this tree as the life that's living me, the breath, and then the fruit that breath is producing. Whether I'm stifling my knowledge or my insight because I'm blind and don't see correct. So I come over here to this circle and I do the cross in the middle of it, and I put the 12 digits, the 12 marks which refer to the 12 children of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 apostles of Jesus, 12 disciples, the 12 foundation stones in the building, etc., etc. The 12 stones in the breastplate of the high priest. Everywhere you see that word 12. And what does that word 12 have? What does it has to do with government? Generally it's the word for government. 10 becomes the word for law. 12 becomes the word for government, or to govern. But it also has a very unique symbolism about it. We're going to look at that here in Luke chapter 2. It also refers to a complete cycle. It starts right here at Aries, and it goes around this way through all 12, and it comes back to right here where it starts at, and it's called a complete cycle. So 12, also when I see the number 12, I can realize it's referring to a whole cycle. Like for instance in Psalms, I think, seems like it's Psalms 87, it says, I was born and shapen in iniquity. Actually that word iniquity means shy of a cycle. And so if I incubate from here to here, which that's how long you incubate, a human being incubates for 9 months, right? Then I'm shy of a cycle. That's all that means. I'm shy of a cycle. They translated that word iniquity. And so you know what they told you? They said, you were born in sin. You was born a sinner. That little baby's born that way. He's a sinner. He's going to go to hell. Well, is that not dumb? How can anybody look at a brand new infant baby and say that it's a sinner, it's shapen in iniquity, it's the seed of Eve, bless God. That's its whole problem.
But then to make up for us all feeling bad about sinful babies, so many denominations came out with the age of accountability.
Yeah,
And nobody can tell you exactly what that age was depending upon each
but you know what they
denomination.
tried to hang out on? They hung out on the full cycle at the age of 12.
At the age of 12.
So that's how they hung that. But you say at the age of 12 is when you bar mitzvah. At the age of 12 is when a boy actually begins to produce a seed. At the age of 12 or right thereabouts is when a girl starts her monthly cycle, etc. So there's a real key to that. If we would grasp it, we would begin to see what it's saying. So that's why I put this up here. The astrological wheel has everything in Scripture grows out of that. Okay? And so here's this passage in Luke chapter 2. And I want to read, let's see, let me start with verse 42. Notice this. And you all know this story. And when he was 12. Look at that. Now, I want you to see what this is saying. And I realize I'm looking at this symbolically. I'm not trying to see it literally. But it's okay if you want to look at it literally. When he was 12, in other words, he had actually completed the cycle of being natural. He completed that. Just like we were talking about, he's now at the age of accountability. That's what we say that. Or he's crossing the threshold from a boy to a man. He now has a potential to produce a child. Do you follow what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is he's fully natural. Now I can say he's fully natural. Now another side of that, the downside of that also is most every one of us, by the time we are 12-year-old, we have already developed the habits, the addictions, all of the things that do not serve me, the grudges, the unforgiveness, the hurts, the pains, the abuses, all of those things that do not serve me, I've already accumulated all of those things in my tender young years, and now I don't even know it, I'm ingrained in them. My oldest brother put me up to all kinds of meanness, so he had me smoking cigarettes at 4 and 5 years old. So by the time I was 12-year-old, I was a habitual smoker. But I didn't smoke in front of my parents. Well, they would have sent me on to hell. They'd kill me. They'd have beat me up. But he used to put me up, when I was 6 and 7 years old, he would put me up to going into a little country grocery store and stealing stuff for him. I'm 5, 6 years old. Well, you know, when I was a teenager and a young man, I was involved in stealing and thought I was going to go to prison as a result of stealing cars and motorcycles. It was just natural to me. Natural. Why? It's how I had raised, that's how I was. I was sweet in front of Mom and Daddy. Y'all learned how to do that. But when I'm not in front of Mom and Daddy and I'm myself, I'm a little holy tyrant. I know y'all wouldn't, so that's why I'm talking about me, but I'm going to say, by the time I'm 12, I'm already stuck in this. I'm already stuck in many of the appetites, many of the habits, many of the things that I will spend the rest of my entire life trying to get free from, and most people never ever do. They never get free from many of the grudges, the hurts, the pains, that many of them were inflicted by the people that loved them the most. And it all happened when they completed that full cycle at the age of 12. Every one of us. Been there and done it. We didn't realize that this is our pattern. Bereshit is our pattern. Beth, the Va'ith, I'm the container. I am the container, and not only am I containing the essence of the holy, I am the Rashit. I'm its first fruit. I'm also its chief. I'm also in charge.
Wow.
Nobody else is that. You are. You're in charge of you. You produce the fruits of you. Nobody else does that. So here in verse 42, and when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem out after the custom of the feast, and when they had fulfilled the days as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and Mary knew not of it. Mom and Daddy didn't know the boy wasn't there. Now they either was not on their toes, or maybe they had so much fun, they were, who knows, could have had a little too much wine. I ain't sure what the situation is. But you know, I remember when my girls were that age, and I'd take them somewhere if I'm going into a big mall. I got a pretty good eye on them. If nothing else, I'm going to tie a rope around and tie them to me, you know, where I don't lose them. But obviously they weren't thinking about that. So look what happened. So they didn't know they left a kid. Didn't know they left a 12-year-old boy there. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey. Yeah, I would be suspect on that one right there. You're going to go a day, 24 hours, and not even know the kid's there, you know. You'd think, well, he's hungry. We need to look at, find to make sure he's got something to eat, or maybe messed in his diaper. We need to do something, you know. And they sought him among the kinfolks and acquaintances, verse 45. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to pass that after 3 days, I ain't seen the boy in 3 days now. He's gone, I ain't seen him. And after 3 days, they found him. Where did they find him?
In the temple.
In the temple. They found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. Now, I want to say this, and this to me is a typology. It's not a literal story, it's a typology, it's an allegory. And if I look at this as an allegory, I'm going to look at this as an allegory of you and me. And I'm going to say, when I've completed my full cycle in the natural world of 12 years old, now at that point in time, I am able to begin to make decisions that can affect me the rest of my entire life. But I'm also going to have to free myself. I'm also going to have to save myself. I'm also going to have to experience salvation for myself for all of the things that happened during those natural years of growing. From the things that my big brother put me up to. Oh, it's his fault. It wasn't his fault. I did it. You know. Now then, I've got to, and I can't do that now naturally. Look at what he's saying. He said now he's in the temple. They found him. He's in the temple. Verse 47. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, your father and I have sought for you, sorrowing. Well, don't you realize you've just broken our heart? We've been looking for you. We thought you was dead. My God, how could you do this to us? We've been so good to you. We've fed you. We've clothed you. We gave you a bicycle. Where have you been? You hear what they're doing? They were so sorry. Verse 49, and he said unto them, How is it that you sought me? Wished you not that I must be about my Father's business? Now, to me, the allegory is just simply this. After I've completed the cycle of being natural, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we are. We're born and we're built to be natural, but we are also born and built according to the Song of Solomon with this quintessence, with this fifth ability. We can go to the four elements. You know, the four elements right here are Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Those are the four elements. Fire, earth, air, and water. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, i.e. Jehovah. That's the physical. That's all the natural. And I've completed this cycle of being natural. Now then, I must put on that which is spiritual. I must be in the temple about my Father's business. I've been about mother's business. Mother being natural. That's what mother always refers to, the natural. The material. This physical world, there's nothing wrong with it. When we get it in perspective, there's nothing more beautiful than a sunset. I mean, I've seen some sunsets that just, take your breath away. Have you seen plants, trees, flowers, animals, people that are beautiful? We have completed this cycle of being. Now then, we need to rashid. We need to realize that we are the chief. That I am the chiefest of myself. I am that which God created me to be, and that which God created me to be is to make myself whole. To experience my salvation of wholeness, so that I can be exactly what God built me and designed me to be, and that is a conqueror. That is the chief. That is who we are built and created to be. So I said all that to get all y'all saved that hadn't been here.